Welcome to Open Oven. My name is Mike Smith. Today we have a really interesting day. We're going to do desserts today. I think we can do a couple of these desserts in a real short period of time. First, we're going to do butter tarts, famous Canadian, if you want to say. At least there's stories that first butter tart recipes appeared around 1900 in Ontario. And then we're going to do a no-bake peanut butter marshmallow square, or if you're in Minnesota, peanut butter marshmallow bar. Either way, pretty simple to make, fairly limited ingredients, but we're going to give it a shot and see how it turns out today. I have made these butter tarts. This was something, I'm not using my mother's homemade recipe, using something pretty close to that with just a few changes. But it's something that my mother used to make every Christmas, so it seems to be a pretty popular. I'm not going to make the shells. We've gone ahead and cheated a little bit and bought the pre-made shells. Obviously saves you a lot of time and a little bit easier doing it that way. So we're going to make the filling, and we're not going to need to cook the filling. So we're going to start off with corn syrup, about a half a cup of corn syrup. Put that in there. Yep, tastes like corn syrup. We're going to use 2 eggs. I'm going to put those in next so that we can mix that up. Sugar. So this is what we're going to do for sugar. The recipe calls for 1 cup of brown sugar. I'm diabetic, so I always look for opportunities to use some type of sweetener. And so what we're going to do is, instead of the full cup, I'm going to use about half of that. And then now, of course, we need the other half. Now, instead of putting a half a cup of sweetener, you're going to use half of that. So I'm actually going to use a quarter of a cup of sweetener. With sweetener, most artificial sweeteners, you're using about a half of whatever the recipe asks for. So we're going to use about a quarter cup of artificial sweetener. And there's many different kinds, kind of trial and error, what you like. I'm try and start mixing that. Okay, we're going to need some butter. This is a quarter cup of butter. I'm going to go approximately a quarter cup. That's nice and soft. Oh, sorry. I've already got that, don't I? There it is. Sorry, because we need melted butter, because we're not going to be cooking this. We're just going to put it into the shells and begin the baking process. Starting to look like the inside of butter tarts. And we need the vanilla. We're going to put a teaspoon of vanilla. And we're going to mix this really, really well. Just want to keep until basically you've got the lumps, any lumps out. I'm going to stick to this standard filling, but what we're going to do is once we get those into the pastries, I'm going to show you some of the variations you can do, and we're going to make a couple different kinds. You can use pretty much anything that you'd like to add in here, whether that be raisins or whatever it may be. Take a couple of those out. Okay, and we're going to just kind of carefully start to fill this. Remember, we're going to be baking this. And I'm going to fill these about half full. I'm going to tell you, we're going to take a look at them. Starting to look like butter tarts. About half. All right. And so that allows us to, I've got some walnuts, so we're going to make a couple of those, and we're going to add some walnuts in at this stage. If you do it this way, then you don't have to have every butter tart the same. So do that. We've got some goji berries. I'm going to put some of those in. And with the goji berries, we're going to add a tiny little bit of maple syrup, just a little bit. And then we'll top those off a tiny bit. You're going to pop these into the oven, where we'll usually do all 12 of them. There should be enough mix here to get yourself about 10 to 12 butter tarts. We're going to pop that in. We've been preheating the oven at about 350 degrees. You want to make sure that the oven is at 350. Don't put them on early. You're going to put them in there for about 20 to 25 minutes. You can basically tell once they start to thicken up. If they're still runny to touch, you put a knife in or a fork in and it's still runny, then they're not done yet. Obviously the pastry will start to get golden brown. And then after about 20-25 minutes, you should have wonderful looking butter tarts. Welcome back. We now have the butter tarts in the oven. We've got it set at 350 degrees. You're going to bake that for 20 minutes to 25 minutes. What I'll usually do is at 20 minutes, I'll check them. You're going to look to make sure that the filling is hardening. You don't want it obviously liquidy or syrupy. And then you also want to check the shells. So you're going to check the shells. Obviously, they'll turn golden brown kind of on the top. But if you grab one and you kind of lift the tin foil off the bottom and make sure that that's cooking underneath there. You don't want it to be still cold or soggy. If it is, then you're going to leave it on for another 5 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started on the peanut butter marshmallow squares. We're going to use a pot on low, and we're going to take a half a cup of butter. Put that in a hot pot. Get this melting. With this ceramic top, we need to use stainless steel pots, so we need to be careful. It's a really good pot. We're going to use a full cup of peanut butter. And we want to be pretty accurate on this because the recipe is made for an entire bag of butterscotch chips. So we want to make sure we have the right amount of peanut butter to match those. And obviously because we're going to be forming in squares. That seems like a little hot because I can hear that butter sizzling. Just turn that down a little bit. You're melting this. You're not cooking it. So you don't want to be too hot. All right. Looks like we've got our cup of peanut butter. So we're going to start to mix that in there with the butter. I'll show you that here in one sec. that. So it's just gonna kind of look like a gooey mess for a little bit. And again, we're gonna melt that. Just kind of keep stirring it and it'll speed up the melting process a little bit. I'm going to get rid of our spoon. I'm going to go something a little bit bigger. We're going to add an entire bag. I think it's about 300 grams of butterscotch chips. We're going to throw that in there. And then we're going to mix this, like I said, until it's melted. This is obviously going to be the glue that's going to hold our marshmallows together. And again, because this is a no bake, once we've created our melt, and then we're going to start to stir in our mini marshmallows and vanilla, it doesn't take long for that to take form. While we're doing that, we're going to get the pan ready. I'm going to use a square pan. That's the recipe. Should get a nice full square pan worth. I'm going to use parchment paper for obvious reason, so that it's going to come out of there real easy. You don't have to, but chances are you're going to have a sticky mess. So we're going to use parchment paper. I'm going to cut that a little bit bigger than the dish, so that we have some going up the side. And I don't have to be an artist about it. Just give me a piece that's big enough. Give this a little stir. Take a look at that. Again, it's starting to look like a peanut butter goo. Still some lumps in there, so we're going to let that be. All right. And so that's basically what you're going to start with, and you're going to pour that mixture. Once we get there, we're going to pour that mixture into here with when we put our marshmallows in. You want this completely melted. We're almost there. If you can see that, it's nice and thin. Okay, and just stir that up, make sure it's ready to roll. We're going to be ready to put our marshmallows in there. I've got our vanilla all ready to go. It's a teaspoon of vanilla. And we're going to mix that in. We're going to remove it from the heat so that the marshmallows don't actually start to melt. So we're going to remove it from the heat, let it cool for a second, and then we'll slowly stir our marshmallows and vanilla in. So I'm going to take that off the heat. You can see that it's fully melted. Give that a second. We'll start to stir our marshmallows in. And our vanilla. And we are on our way to making our squares. We'll be right back, and we'll take a look at those butter tarts and put our squares together. And we're back. So you can see that our butter tarts are out of the oven. In this case, it did take the 25 minutes. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take those butter tarts and we wanna cool them, mind me. We wanna cool them, so we're gonna put them on a rack, cooling rack. And I'm gonna actually take them out of the shells, but I'm gonna let them cool a little bit more, so that tin foil is cooled down a little bit before I take them out of the tin foil. All right. And you can see we've got several different variations, but they look pretty yummy. They look ready to go. So while we'll get back to that in a second, I will show you that I did use one of them as my sample, and so I cut a piece out of that. I wanted to make sure that the shell was completely finished and cooked, which it was. But it did take the 25 minutes to finish those up. So we've got 4 different variations of pretty much the same thing. So back to the marshmallows, and this is mixed. We've got that peanut butter, marshmallows, butterscotch, yummy yummy goodness, and a little butterscotch, or sorry, a little bit of vanilla in there. And we're gonna take it, we're gonna start at the center of the parchment paper. There we go. So it drops down. Just move it over a tiny bit, try to keep the parchment paper as much as we can. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna form that into this square pan. Get all that peanut butter in there, and then we're going to put it in the refrigerator. Generally you're gonna put that in the refrigerator for about an hour. Again, even variations on this. If you want to use, if you wanted to make it with chocolate chips instead of butterscotch, the butterscotch obviously gives it kind of that traditional brown color, or that light brown color. If you went chocolate chips, obviously it's going to be darker. But again, they're basically the same thing as far as melting goes. You know, you'll have no problem forming it. You can use chocolate chips if you like, and if you want to add anything else. And just make sure you push it to the corners so you get a nice full tray of it. All right, we're gonna take that to the refrigerator and put it in the refrigerator for about an hour. And we're back. Through the magic of television, we now have our squares cooled for an hour. Hopefully that should be hard enough, thick enough to be able to slice that into some nice squares or bars. Yeah, as you can see, our butter tarts look fantastic, some of our variations. Those have cooled sufficiently enough now where I can take that tin foil out. You can see this one's a little bit eaten. I don't know how that happened. That is the one that I used to check to make sure that the dough or the pastry was finished. I'll do that while the oven is still at temperature. That's when we figured out, when I first tried, that we still needed that extra 5 minutes. And so you can leave these, you know, if you only made 12 and you had a couple of children in your family, their butter tarts aren't gonna last long. They're gonna be gone, so you're probably not even gonna worry about refrigerating. But you can leave them on the rack here for a few hours to get them fully. And then after that, you obviously want them to put them into some type of container, seal tight container if you're gonna put them in the fridge, or if you want to, if you have a cake or bread or something like that, you can leave them. If you have a glass covered cake pan, something where you don't want to refrigerate them because you want to keep them fresh and at room temperature, you can do it that way. You know, as you know, that when you're refrigerating, obviously then they're going to be cold. But as you can see, and I'll just use this one as an example, that they're fantastic looking. They look like they've turned out really, really well. We're going to get those different flavors. Real nice. All right, we're going to take our squares and we're going to cut those. And you can see that you'll know if they're ready to be cut because they'll be hard. If you put your knife in and it's still soft, not ready yet. They need a little bit more refrigeration. And then again, if you want to keep these refrigerated, you can. You're probably going to need to, if you live in a fairly warm climate, you're probably going to want to keep these refrigerated. And these are fantastic. Again, if you don't have a lot of time, really even the butter tarts don't take a lot of time. And these are fantastic little snacks. And remember, we did these with, instead of using a cup of brown sugar, we used half a cup of brown sugar and we used our artificial sweetener. So for goodies, they have a lot less sugar than you would if you were using all brown sugar. I better taste it one more time, make sure it's okay. Fantastic. All right, we'll grab one of these kind of nice looking ones. Maybe one of these. And like I said, two real easy desserts to make that probably won't last very long in your household. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to Open Oven. Hope you enjoy.